And we're ready whenever you are, Mayor.
Thank you. Good evening, and thank you for attending tonight's city council meeting. For those who are attending remotely, the camera in council chambers is set up to show those attending in person tonight. The platform we are using has a raised hand feature. You will notice a picture of a hand in the upper right-hand corner. When we reach the point in the meeting where the public has the opportunity to address council, you can click that button to be given your opportunity to address council. Please stand for the pledge of allegiance. I pledge allegiance to the flag of the United States of America and to the republic for which it stands, one nation under God, indivisible, with liberty and justice for all. Kathy, would you please call the roll?
Mayor Tulley,
Here.
Counselor Selly,
Here.
Counselor Powers,
Here.
Counselor Scamperly,
Here.
Counselor Stevenson, here, Counselor Trim, here, Counselor Weaver,
Here.
quorum present.
We do not have any presentations tonight, and we do not have any public hearings tonight, so that brings us to personal appearance. At this time, if anyone attending in person would like to address council, please come down to the podium and you will have 5 minutes.
Thank you, sir. Fonda, these escorts to be passed around, please. Thank you.
City Council, Mayor, City Manager, good evening. Copy of the North Country this week is being handed to the council, mayor, and the city manager. As you know, there has been much discussion over the last 9 months about the water and sewer rates and the definition of what qualifies as a home business. It was recently brought to our attention that a member of city staff is advertising a business out of their home. As you can see, the advertisement insert for Travelista Travels inside the North Country this week has their home business address on it. So with the home address being on the advertisement, it lets the consumer know where the business is located. One can only assume that it would be okay for their services to go there for their services that are offered. So, so is this an internet-based business only, or is it a commercial, residential, mixed structure home business because their home address is on it? My wife picked up some copies of North Country this week while she was here at City Hall today paying our water bill. But none of them had the advertisement inside, so she went to Price Chopper to pick them up. We see this as a conflict of interest, as city staff was the ones that proposed the new definition of a home business to council. The argument was made to council by city staff that the definition needs to have leeway so they can decide as to who's going to pay additional water and sewer rates for home businesses and who wasn't. Is this business going to pay, or by the new definition are they excluded from paying it? Under the old definition, every business would have had to pay. Let me remind you, we did not ask the city to change the definition, nor did we ask the city to lower the rates being paid. So now I question, why did city staff need to change? Why does city staff need a new definition? Maybe somebody could clarify that for me. I am looking forward to the new ethics board in January so we can present some information on what we believe are 2 different violations by 2 different individuals. I would again like to ask the city manager for a meeting to sit down and discuss the entire water and sewer situation. If not, then we'll keep presenting to council. You have our email, please let us know. I'm handing a copy of this to the clerk so it can be documented in the meetings. I really didn't want to bring this up, but there's no other way to communicate with you people. Can't get a meeting, sit down, discuss things. So our only solution is to come here and talk. So, thank you.
Thank you.
Mayor, if appropriate, I'd like to respond to that.
Discussing with council, we'd rather wait and discuss it either under old business or items for discussion.
Anytime.
Okay, thank you.
Thank you.
Anyone else? Now, if anyone attending remotely would like to address council, please use the raised hand feature. The city clerk will recognize and unmute one person at a time, and you will have 5 minutes.
I do not see any hands raised, Mayor.
Do we have any correspondence tonight, Kathy?
We do not.
So next, it brings us to our consent agenda. That the claims as enumerated in general fund warrant number 23-2024 in the amount of $141,979.42. And library warrant number 23-2024 in the amount of $0. And capital fund warrant number 23-2024 in the amount of $208.96. And community development fund warrant number 23-2024 in the amount of $0. And community renewal fund warrant number 23-2024 in the amount of $0 as audited, be in the same hereby are ordered paid. I so move.
Second.
Kathy, please call the roll.
Mayor Tulley,
Yes.
Counselor Selly,
Yes.
Counselor Powers,
Yes.
Counselor Scamperly,
Yes.
Counselor Stevenson,
Yes.
Counselor Trim, Counselor Weaver,
Yes.
approved.
We do not have any appointments tonight, so that brings us to items for council action. Our first item of business will be read by City Manager Fonda Cronis.
A resolution to ratify a labor contract with CSEA hourly unit for the years 2025 and 2026.
I'd like to move that. Second.
Fonda, can you give us a highlights of the agreement, please?
Happy to do so. The 2-year agreement, as I stated, there are increases in the starting wages to try and be more competitive with competitors out there. Salary increases are 4% in the first year, 3% in the second year. We recognize 2 different pay bands to recognize the difference in tasks between the water and sewer workers versus the regular DPW workers. Increased 2 longevity payments are the major highlights. There are some wording changes for health insurance and some other minor housekeeping changes that will happen, but those I would consider the main points.
Questions or comments by council? Kathy, would you please call the roll?
Counselor Scamperly,
Yes.
Counselor Stevenson,
Yes.
Counselor Trim, Counselor Weaver,
Yes.
Mayor Tulley,
Yes.
Counselor Selly,
Yes.
Counselor Powers,
Yes.
approved.
Our next item of business will be read by City Manager Fonda Cronis.
A resolution authorizing the city manager to sign an agreement between the city of Ogdensburg and the Ogdensburg Volunteer Rescue Squad for ambulance/rescue services within the boundaries of the city of Ogdensburg.
Move that. Second.
Again, would you walk us through the highlights, Fonda?
Sure, there are very few changes to this agreement from the previous contract. I will ask you to look at section 3 in-kind benefits. That's where there are 2 minor changes. Subsection G, the city will sponsor all VRS employees for coverage under workers' compensation. Previously, the city sponsored volunteers. This will be of help to the rescue squad, but will not cost the city any money. All we do is sponsor, and they will pay their portion of whatever the costs are for those premiums. But that's a way for the city to be able to help lower the cost of the rescue squad. The second change is in section H, just below that. OVRS will provide emergency medical and transport services to City of Ogdensburg employees and retirees. It used to be at no cost to the employee. We changed that to the Medicare rate. The reason for that was previously, and I think Councilor Silly could probably add some context if necessary, employees and retirees were not billed for ambulance services, but their insurance was. Now our insurance is different with a high deductible, and the city pays a portion of that high deductible part. So in order to address that and not have the city pay for full ambulance rates, we've agreed to use the Medicare rate, which is significantly reduced from the regular rates that ambulances would emergency service ambulances would cost and charge.
Questions or comments? I would note that the term of this agreement is a 4-year term beginning January 1 of 2025 through December 31 of 2029. And I'm pleased personally to see this context of this agreement continue with our local rescue squad. Kathy, please call the roll.
Counselor Stevenson?
Yes.
Counselor Trim?
Yes.
Counselor Weaver?
Yes.
Mayor Tulley?
Yes.
Counselor Selly?
Abstain.
Counselor Powers?
Yes.
Counselor Scamperly?
Yes.
Approved.
Our next item of business will be read by City Manager Fonda Cronis.
And our resolution authorizing the city manager to execute an agreement between the city of Ogdensburg and the Ogdensburg Bridge and Port Authority for airport services.
I'll move that. Second.
Again, highlights.
No changes from previous year. There is a cost to the Bridge and Port Authority for 2 law enforcement officers, the equivalent of 2 law enforcement officers, full-time officers, as well as a provision to pay overtime if overtime is generated. I will note that we will be working with the Bridge and Port Authority over the next several months in quarter 1 and quarter 2, especially to try and come up with a system that provides peace officers as opposed to law enforcement officers. We'll have to see how that works out and financially. But this is an onerous contract on the OBPA, and so as a good partner, we'd like to work with them to try and to make it a more feasible contract for them overall. We'll see. More to come on that. We'll see how it works, but I did want to make that point.
Got any ground level information related to the peace officer aspect of it?
I'll defer to the chief on that. I don't necessarily know all the details on how that's going to work, and he would be able to probably give to you in about 30 seconds.
Yeah, so the quickest way is, as a law enforcement entity, we have the ability to hire what's called special patrol officers. Special patrol officers are essentially hold peace officer status, and they have their law enforcement authorities to guard a public building. An airport would fall under that. And to be a special patrol officer, you have to be retired law enforcement of any sort. So you could be a retired state correction officer, you could be retired state trooper, retired police officer. There is a civil service test, and there is an active list currently for that. The only people that have to take that test are retired corrections officers and retired New York State troopers. For some reason, our state doesn't give state troopers the same certification as they do municipal police officers. So once a state trooper retires, they don't keep their training, where a state or municipal police officer does for a couple of years. So essentially, once these folks are hired, there's 8 weeks of training, which the Potsdam Police Academy does. The first 8 weeks of their regular police academy is also the 8 weeks that's needed for the special patrol officer training. And they essentially could work the airport after that training. And we have a year actually that they could be trained. So we could hire someone and get them trained within a year. But they could start working before that training actually occurs with just some simple in-house training. So yeah, that's the plan, that we would do some sort of over the next year kind of work in to get away from our full-time Leos being out there and work into some peace officers who are working under our badge, under our authority. It may not be full-time peace officers because, they'd be part-time employees, and, they'll need days off as well. And sometimes we might have to stick one of our own law enforcement officers out there. But again, 2025 will be our folks out there, and we'll see what the future brings. They'd still be working under our badge. So they're under our policies, one set of rules. Their investigative authorities as peace officers is limited compared to what a police officer is. So that's a hurdle. So again, that's why I think it makes more sense to keep them under our badge, our authority, because we've been out there for years and years, and we have a great partnership. And our discussions have been just that. When there's been major incidents out there, everyone looks to OPD like, hey, what should we be doing? Whether it's the state police or the sheriff's office, because of our great relationship out there. And we know all the players, we know the airport staff, we know who to contact through TSA when there is an incident out there. So we're looking to continue that relationship, but it just might look different, and just be less responsibility for our folks moving forward, where they can concentrate on what they should be doing, and that's being police officers here in the city.
I can see the benefit of be keeping the law enforcement officers, the police officers in the community so much as to providing security, but we obviously we would be responsible for the training of these peace officers ultimately at the end of the day.
Yes, yeah, there'd be,
And understanding that if this is a ground level
Yep.
upstart.
absolutely, and you're right, there'd be yearly use of force training, yearly firearms training, you know, the de-escalation training, all the yearly training that
Yeah.
is required, they would not be exempt from that. So there's still
No, understood.
a lot that's going to have to move forward. And so of course, there's still going to be a revenue side and an expenditure side to the budget for us as well. So that'll all be ironed out in the future.
Thank you, Chief.
All right, thank you.
Any other questions or comments? And I would just note that this agreement is a one-year agreement beginning January 1st. So with that, Kathy, would you please call the roll?
Counselor Trim? Yes. Counselor Weaver?
Yes.
Mayor Tulley?
Yes?
Counselor Selly?
Yes.
Counselor Powers?
Yes.
Counselor Scamperly?
Yes.
Counselor Stevenson?
Yes.
Approved.
Our next item of business we read by City Controller Angela Gray.
Mayor, I'm going to pinch it for Angela because she's on online virtual. A resolution calling for a public hearing on a local law to amend Chapter 215, Sections 39, 40, and 41 of the Ogdensburg Municipal Code entitled Water Rates.
Move that.
Second.
Questions or comments? I would just note that the city is unable to proceed with a public hearing in our next meeting, which is next Monday, because we're required to have 7 days public notice before that public hearing can be held. So that's why the resolution calls for the public hearing and possible action on this resolution to take place on Monday, January 13th. I gave some misinformation to a citizen this morning about that, so I wanted to clarify that. So with that, Kathy, please call the roll.
Counselor Weaver?
Yes.
Mayor Tulley?
Yes.
Counselor Selly?
Yes.
Counselor Powers?
Yes.
Counselor Scamperly?
Yes.
Counselor Stevenson?
Yes.
Counselor Trim? Yes. Approved.
Our next item of business we read by City Manager Father Cronus.
A resolution calling for a public hearing on a local law to amend Chapter 177, Sections 5 and 6 of the Ogdensburg Municipal Code entitled Sewer Rates.
Move that.
Second.
Questions or comments? I would just note a couple of items. First, in section 177-6, letter C, the combination residential commercial rate per year, there was a typo in that number. It is $662, not $622. And that will be corrected when it comes to the floor for action at the January 13th meeting. The other thing I'd like to comment on is that I raised a question at the last meeting whether or not we needed to revise the sewer code as it relates to a definition of the commercial home residence. And in discussing that today with staff, I learned that the current language in the sewer code speaks to the combination residential commercial properties, dictates that sewer rates will be based on consumption of water, both metered and flat. And so since it's based on consumption of water, the definition of the commercial business that is in the code related to water, which we recently amended, is the driver of what rate is charged for sewer as well. As was explained to me today in very simple terms, water in, water out is the driver. And you may experience members of council may have heard that before. So, so that explains why staff believes, and I support their opinion, that there needs to be no change to the language or a definition in that regard. With that, Kathy, would you please call the roll?
Mayor Tulley?
Yes.
Counselor Selly?
Yes.
Counselor Powers?
Yes.
Counselor Scamperly?
Yes.
Counselor Stevenson?
Yes.
Counselor Trim? Yes. Counselor Weaver?
Yes.
Approved.
That brings us to old business. Does everyone have any old business tonight? And at this point, I would defer to city manager to offer comment.
Sure, thanks, Mayor, I appreciate that. It's been a very long time since my credibility has ever been questioned, so let me address Mr. Snyder's comments directly and unequivocally. There's no conflict of interest in this matter. My spouse's professional activities are entirely separate from my responsibilities as a city manager, and any suggestion to the contrary are simply untrue and they are unfair. The changes we proposed as city management to address equity concerns surrounding home-based businesses were the result of extensive collaboration among the entire management team. I will remind you that this is an issue that I inherited, did not come into being with me starting in July. It was something that happened well beforehand. The goal, as I understand it, was to balance the concerns raised by the Snyders, and those concerns were valid, with the city's commitment to foster a business-friendly environment. While the proposed and eventual passed solution is not perfect, it is a significant improvement over the previous approach, and it does aim to be more equitable, and I do believe it will yield more equity. Specifically, in this case, a part-time at-home travel business where interactions occur solely via email, snail mail, or telephone with no customer visits to the home or products produced on site is similar to other non-consumer facing home-based businesses such as contracting. Under the revised code, such businesses, including my household, would not typically incur additional water and sewer charges. However, in the interest of full transparency, if my wife chooses to continue her business, I will voluntarily ensure that my property is assessed the higher rate. This decision is made solely to uphold the highest standard of transparency and accountability. I want to make clear, similar businesses, however, should not be held to the same voluntary standard that I'm applying to myself. I want to make sure that council knows that this is an approach that should underscore my commitment to fairness and transparency in governance.
That's above and beyond.
I appreciate that, but I am happy to do so.
Any response by council?
Can I just say something on this entire topic? The previous council set a tone for its meetings and for its citizens of hostility and anger. And I think that we as a council are working really, really hard to turn that around. And I would like to ask Mr. and Mrs. Snyder to work with us with that kind of spirit. Just to approach it with a little more kindness and maybe assuming the best of people, because I know that I agree with you. And so I'm trying to do what is right by all of the citizens. And I tend to be a little bit of a bleeding heart, so I'm more likely to do what's right by the citizens and not necessarily taking into consideration the effect on the finances of the city. So I'm working on that. This is new to me, but I think most of us would appreciate being treated with the kind of kindness one is treated with. So that's all I have to say.
Anybody else on council?
I would like to just make a comment. Fonda, I thank you for doing that. And we as elected officials or officials of the city have a higher standard of accountability. It's not just, is there a conflict? It's, is there a perception of a conflict? And that's what we always have to think. And that's a determination that I received a number of years ago when I was on council with a real estate transaction that was clearly no conflict when the attorneys looked at it. But when I inquired further, it's the perception of the conflict that is most important. So I always keep that in mind. And I do wish we could all be kinder with each other, but sometimes it's hard when you feel that no one is listening or acting quickly enough to what you need. And I think we as a council need to realize that we understand all the steps we have to go through, and we understand all the other fires we're putting out, all the other items that are of day-to-day operation that we need to do. But when someone feels that they have been waiting and waiting and waiting for responses or action, they do become more adamant about it. And that's the difficult part. and especially for us with updating the public. So I think that going forward, we need to realize that sometimes when someone's having an issue, just general press releases or more updates would be valuable to keep people understanding that we are working on it and that it is important to us. So while I do appreciate the kindness that we have to do, it goes both ways. And I think the updates are very much an integral part of what we do.
I'd like to address that. I'm never one to stand down if I think I'm right on something, so I don't think that either the Snyders or the other folks that have previously shown up to express their opinion on this issue should stand down. That's not be adamant. But the personal attacks and the sarcasm have no place, and they don't actually help you achieve your goal, because it creates, I want to say hurt feelings, and then that's too maybe therapist speak, but it creates bad feelings, and then people, even if they want to do what's right by you, they find it harder to do it because maybe there's been snarkiness or sarcasm or like character attacks. And so if you really want something, you don't stand down. You also don't attack people personally and make it a hostile environment. That's not an environment that's conducive to getting what you want. So, and it makes life unhappy. So I'm just going to tell how it feels.
Anyone else on council?
Yeah, I just want to follow up and piggyback Donna's opinion and thoughts. We have beat this thing to levels that, in my opinion, we have, and I've said it vocally in here, and as far as updates or anything else, this whole council has spoke of the codes and the aspects of codes that need to be changed in certain aspects. Our code needs a serious reworking. It's been said, I've said it countless times in this chamber. That needs to happen, and eventually it will happen. But there's a lot, and we're an indigent city. We've got a lot on our plate. We've got a host of codes, water, sewer, code enforcement, you name it. And that's just codes. Now you break out into the rest of the government, which we have spoke about in this chamber, that needs to be addressed, and we will get to it. But to have somebody attempt to start up a business in the city of Ogdensburg, and I'm assuming it's an upstart, because I don't know of any travel agencies in the city. Quite frankly, I might be looking for one here shortly, but all that aside, this could be an upstart. And if it's a home-based business, then I'm sure that it'll be addressed along the way. But this code, everything in every aspect of this council, we've all sat up here over this very issue and addressed this, and we will get to it. I'm confident in that. The mayor's in this building every day from 9 to noon addressing these things and dealing with a lot of these things and sharing information as well as Fonda. So, with that, I mirror Donna's concern over the concept of doing governmental business and doing it in a manner that's respectful, that is genuine, and needs to move forward. I'm not, no disrespect to the Snyders in any way, shape, or form here, but ultimately these things are things that we need to address, and we will. We've made it clear in here that we will, and I'm confident that we will.
Anyone else on council? Well, I'll just make the following statement that, since the issue was first brought to our attention earlier this year, I think there has been an attempt by this council working with management to try to achieve the goal of making the assessment of water and sewer user fees to home businesses a more equitable among these type of businesses, as well as more affordable. And, so I think after a lot of debate, I think the actions that council took at the last meeting was our attempt to try to achieve those goals. And now that, the language has been changed as it has, and the rates will be established in a January meeting after public hearing, it will take time for us now to go forward and implement this, as we also have to deal with, as Councilor Powers referred to, many other issues outside of this arena, outside of the area of water and sewer. And so, as we've asked in other aspects of government business for the public to be patient with us as this council, working with management, makes an attempt to try to address services within the city while trying to address limited resources, limited staffing, that, hang in there with us, and we hope, it's our goal over time that things will get incrementally better. Right? But I do think we have established this council since January 1st an atmosphere of respect in this chamber and outside in this chamber when communicating and addressing and speaking with our citizens. And that was a major goal for us at the start of the year. As we're completing our first year, I think we've made great strides in that arena. And I hear from the public, whether it's outside or whether it's in the mayor's office, although I have to admit, when the golf clubs are out Tuesdays and Thursday mornings, I'm not here 9 to noon. Okay. All right. But, we recognize there's a problem. We think we've taken steps to address the problem. It's now up to our management and our administrative team to try to enforce what we have agreed to or voted on as council in this area. And we'll see, as Councilor Stevenson referenced it, we'll hope to get periodic updates as to how we're proceeding. Any other old business to come before council? All right. New business. Does everyone have any new business to see? Brings us to items for discussion. Anyone have any items for discussion tonight? Okay, I do have one. The Claxton Hepburn Medical Center is hosting a Winter Wonderland concert on Thursday, December 19th at 7 p.m. at the Olvay Auditorium. The Northern Lights Orchestra is performing. Cost is $25 a tickets, with the benefits going to the Claxton Hepburn Medical Center Foundation. So I was asked to announce that. And again, I would encourage the public to enjoy this holiday entertainment being sponsored by the Claxton Hepburn Medical Center Foundation. That brings us back to citizen participation. At this time, if anyone attending in would like to address council, please come down to the podium and you will have 2 minutes. If anyone attending remotely would like to address council, please use the raised hand feature. The city clerk will recognize and unmute one person at a time, and you will have 2 minutes.
I don't see any hands raised, Mayor.
We do not have need for executive session tonight, so I make a motion to adjourn.
Second.
All in favor?
Aye.
Aye. Meeting adjourned.